I would begin the recording now. So welcome to those who are joining us for all of the journey and who are meeting with us for the fifth week in a row. Welcome to all those who are joining us for the facilitation track and are here in the third session. And to all those, there's 9 people who are joining us only for today's session. Welcome to you as well. It's fantastic to see you. As you can see now, to see all the participants, you have to go through 2 screens. As the time progresses, probably it's going to be more screens, but just, you know, like check who's there. It might be that you're going to know these people. And before we begin, you know, like I was going through the most common and annoying mistakes in online facilitation that we identify and we experience. And as I was going through that, I was like, oh my God, you know, let's make sure we don't make that many of them in this meeting. So the first one I would like to do is I actually, you know, like really enjoy in these times of, you know, like the majority of us being in our homes or there where the crisis met us, seeing the geographic diversity. So what I would like to begin the meeting by is by asking you to change your name. Sometimes the name is still, you know, like Sarah's iPad, because it was your kids who were playing with that. So to change your name really to your actual first name and also to your location. So where is it that you currently are? And if you don't know how to do it, let me share that with you. You just go on participants and you click on your name and then you can rename yourself. You can do that same thing by clicking on your picture in the gallery view and then changing your name. So like that, I'm also gonna change so you don't have to see my family name because it's not important now, and it hides Berlin from it. So like that, we can see who is where from. And a second thing I am doing, following what we identified as well, is I would like to make, you know, where many of us are in 6 weeks of lockdown, a partial or complete, I just do want to acknowledge that there's probably gonna be a variety of emotions and emotional states we have gone through. And sometimes have been more joyful and felt like a promise of a vacation we have long been longing for, and sometimes were more tough with our kids and partners around and too much complexity and diversity wanting to get our attention. So in the spirit of checking in, I would like to just ask us all to write with one word. How is it that you're checking in today into the call? What, you know, like, how does this space inside of you feel checking into this call? If you could type one word into the chat box, please. We have zen, dancing, spacious, focused, relaxed, fractured, happy, ready and curious, tired, excited, stressed, energy, energized, concentrate, curious, calm, curious, excited, warmed by the sun, here, quite normal, frustrated, excited, tired but curious, excited and happy. Thank you so much. I wanted to check, 2 weeks ago, we gave you a homework that was to find a group of 3 or 4 people and meet up with them and facilitate some meetings on Zoom and check the functionalities that were there. I would just like to ask you to give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. How did that go? Let us see from those who, yeah, shaky. Okay, good, in process. Yeah, both good and bad, Gabriela. Okay, I can see that. Wonderful. You know what, actually, between last meeting and this meeting, what I did is I went through our chat and read the chat from our last meeting, and it was a really good read. So what I would propose is, if there was a particular obstacle that you stumbled upon in facilitating a meeting online, please write it down in the chat, and let's have the participants answer participants' challenges, because I'm sure with the group we have here, you all know all the answers that are needed. So if there's something where you go, it's not only because I need more practice, but there's something where I or we got stuck and we didn't know how to proceed and we couldn't find it, just share it with others, and let's make sure that we find a solution for that. And Mara, if there is anything that we don't, like we see that the solution hasn't been found, let's just take care of that. And yeah, also hello to Mara, who is here today with me. Like you are every week and I am with you.
I'll be grouping the unanswered questions.
Wonderful. Beautiful. Okay, so during the last session, we were asking you in breakouts to come up with the things that are the toughest obstacles and challenges in facilitating online meetings. And I collected them, and I was surprised how, you know, like how aligned they were. So I would like to share that with you and launch a poll now. And I'm launching a poll with multiple answers with the title, Most Frequent Mistakes in Online Meetings, Mistakes that hurt, you know? So if you could choose, what is it that you find particularly painful, irritating? Where do you notice that if this happens, that actually gets your attention and differs your attention from the meeting? So if you could vote, you can do multiple answers as well. Can you see the poll? Yeah, all right. One thing I got to learn is in Zoom, you only can give 10 possible answers. So I wanted to enter more, but I had to cluster sometimes. Let's give it maybe 5 more seconds. Okay. I'm closing the poll and I'm hoping to share. Can you see the results? So the results are tech issues. Can you hear me? Keyboard sounds clicking in the background. Meetings with no evident purpose or lack of explicit communication of goals. And this is something that we were covering last time, also with the time task territory matrix, how to make sure that people, the right people are in the right meeting, that the meeting has the right format, the right length. What I really found interesting is the insufficient preparation of host and participants. This is something, especially like the insufficient preparation of participants. And what I found humbling when I read your proposals was the too much content. And as I was doing my check-in call today with Mara, I realized that I definitely would like to offer too much content for today. So we're gonna find some content in the report that most probably I'm not gonna cover in the call. I'm gonna add these results also to our report because, you know, like I find these two levels really interesting. Like one is the mistakes we observe frequently, and the other level is how tough are they to actually experience them. And let me stop sharing. This is to answer to one of the mistakes that happens often. Here is a game plan for today. So we're focusing on facilitating complex meetings. And the first thing is that I would like to share with you are some tech backgrounds, because there is, you know, like if the tech is not working, then it's irritating, but this is something that is easily fixed. Right? So this is something where we can share a learning with you. You can just take it, you can add yours, and this is easily done. Then the second thing is I would like to walk through you just really quickly through the Mighty Networks platform to show you one possible platform for collaboration. And then, Kelvi, we would like to open the space for a conversation between us around something that is tougher and more complex in online facilitation, which is creating high quality experience, right? So it's like moving beyond the technical things and go into how do we create a certain atmosphere, a certain quality of a container in a meeting that we're hosting. What I'm not going to cover with you, but where I'm going to share sufficient results for you to swim through it by yourself, is the working with teams over time. And we would like to finish with a breakout session where you can make a plan to up your game in facilitation. Okay, last week, some of you were in our last week's meeting. That was the meeting, the intermediate meeting on visualization. And that was a very beautiful example of a cluster fox, I would say, because Mara had a fantastic plan. And it was like a very ambitious plan with using like complex methods and going from one place to another. And if everything went perfect, that would be very breathtaking and very elegant. But what often happens when you have these elaborate plans is that element of real life comes in. And what happens then is, you know, the vibrancy of the behind the scenes improvising is particularly high, to frame it in this way. So last week, I was communicating to very many of you who needed, for example, to know which is the number of the breakout I went to. I don't remember what it was. And we were working in Zoom and in Mural as well, which is a collaborative whiteboard. And people needed to submit submit their visuals to a host from their space. So there was like a lot of things happening at the same time. Some people were joining later, some people were leaving. So we had this composition of breakout spaces that I made screenshots of. I sent it to Sven. Sven was uploading things to Mural. Then I was emailing Sven going like, Sven, the composition of breakouts has changed, you know? And all of that was happening. And at the same time, when I am a co-host of Mara's session, Mara sees my video first. That means she's staring at my face all of the time, whether she wants it or not. So I have to be all, like all peaches. Everything needs to be fantastic. And I'm dealing here with things in the background and I'm like, yeah. And I'm giving Mara, visual cues saying you're doing great, like what you're saying is very relevant here, checking the chat and going like, yeah, people have questions. So it's all of these things that are happening and you need to keep your straight face. So we really, like as a team, we loved this real life experience last week and we would like to share our learning from that with you today. So I would like to, I collected it in a little presentation that you will also get after the meeting, and let me share my screen with you. And for whichever reason, there we go. Here it is. So behind the scenes, and I have that divided into 3 roles: the role of a facilitator, of a co-facilitator, which is who Mara is today, and the role of the team. So for facilitator, I only have 3 points because we covered everything else in our other modules. But, like oftentimes you are the one who's broadcasting a lot and you wonder, how is the experience actually for people? And what we feel is that we don't know, we cannot connect. So one of the things that we found out is really helpful is to have your team members join the breakout sessions, because breakout sessions is where a very special exchange is happening. And then to feedback to you saying, hey, people are having good conversations, or people are having many conversations around trying to understand. So like that, what's the mood in the group. Second thing that Mara and I learned is sometimes when you send everybody to breakout sessions, there's a couple of people who still stay in the main session and you and your co-facilitator want to have a conversation. You can do that. You can take your phone, you can have a conversation, but switch off your mic and also switch off your camera, because otherwise people see you're on the phone and it's just unnecessary distraction. I work a lot with communities, with the Leadership Festival community. We have tri-weekly calls, so we are often between 10 and 40 people. So when I send everybody out into breakouts and I say, now you have 20 minutes to have a nice conversation, at the first call I notice, hold on a second, they're all having a nice conversation and I'm waiting for 20 minutes. So that sucks. So when you're working in a setting where it's more like a collegial exchange, what you can do is you can tell people to, you can invite somebody just to stay with you in the main room. And like that, you also have a partner with whom you can have a conversation. Now that was everything for the facilitator. Everything else about the facilitator, you know already. Now we have two lists, or like 2 pages of a list for the co-facilitator. Thing one comes from the open space world, and that's a concept of space invaders. So a co-facilitator is a person who has the facilitators back. They take care that no disruptions and unnecessary things are getting to the facilitator, so that the facilitator can focus only on delivering their work. So, you know, like, beware of space invaders, and including yourself. That's my note to self, because I often go like, oh, that's a funny comment, you know, I'm just going to add it. It's not a funny comment. Let that person do their work, you know, don't disturb them. The second thing is make your team members co-hosts. You can see it here, how to do that. So like that, you will see their video first. And then if there's anything that requires your attention, you're going to be able to see it very fast. Now you have seen us dividing the roles so that the one of us that's facilitating is not paying attention to the chat, but the other one is, so when there are questions coming in the chat, don't just go like, oh, that's a nice question, I'm gonna come back to that. The chat, like, it moves very fast. So when there's anything important, copy it, including the name of the person, so you can then faster share it. Kelby, something I learned from the North America breakouts is when you have a larger team in the room and you send participants to a breakout, you can send the team to a breakout as well. Like that, they can have a mid-session feedback, and that's super helpful. Also, there is something when you have these bigger sessions, there's going to be people who come late or get kicked out. And when you're doing breakout sessions, they are unassigned. You're going to find them at the very top of the breakout sessions, and they're in they're in the list that's called unassigned participants. So always, before you send people to the breakouts, just make sure that you go once again to the view of who's in the breakout and where they are, and assign everybody to a breakout space. At the same time, there are participants who are just listening in, right? They're not going to be participating, but they're more using this as a podcast kind of a thing. And if you send them to a breakout session and they haven't actively clicked on join a breakout, they're going to be in gray. And you want to have a look at this, how many participants in gray are in each breakout session, just to make sure that nobody is actually by themselves with only inactive participants. Now in this this screenshot I took from somebody else's, and you can see that it's clicked move all participants into breakout rooms automatically. I do not like this option. I like people having the freedom and the liberty of choosing, I'm going to a breakout or not going to a breakout, because some people are not in the position to have a conversation in a small group, and it's okay. They should have the freedom to decide that. Also, I like clicking allow participants to return to the main session. You never know what's happening in a breakout. People need to have the liberty to come back, and also maybe they just want to ask you a question. One other thing that I find particularly important as a participant, so I also like it when I'm co-facilitating, is when you switch on a timer, right? Like this one, breakout rooms close automatically after 30 minutes. That means that in the upper right corner, there's going to be a clock, a countdown clock. And then you have this set countdown timer to closing the breakouts for 30 seconds or 60 seconds. They need to be aligned. If they're not aligned, people are confused. When am I coming back to the main room? You as a host, you will always see the clock as well. So it's easy to synchronize it, but you just need to pay attention. So one rule I really like is report positive news to facilitator, right? So let them know, you know, like you as a co-facilitator, you're doing good. People really like the examples you're saying, and resolve bad news without the facilitator even noticing, right? If it's possible. There is a nice agreement between a host and a co-host, facilitator and a co-facilitator. If you want to, if you're a co-facilitator and you want to share something, just unmute yourself like that, because I see you all of the time. I'm gonna know that if you're unmuted, you want attention actually. And one thing that is really tough is when you have a larger team, there is no option in Zoom to have a chat with many people. So that's tough. So that's everything for a co-facilitator. And if you do that, the facilitator's job is really a way better one. And they just can commit all of their energy to being with the group. And for the team, when you're set as a co-host, you know, like everybody can see your face. So keep a happy face, right? Like just make sure that you're not doing things that are off screen. There's also the option that we did last week when team members were working as coaches and they were joining multiple breakout sessions. So there's this option that a team member goes to one breakout session, then comes back and then goes to a different breakout session. That's just a really neat trick that we want to share with you. If there's anything that's worth attention, report it to the co-facilitator, right? Not to the facilitator, but to the co-facilitator, and let them deal with that. And it is important for you to remember that you are co-holding the container. So be focused and keep your video on, period. You know, like teammates that are there and have their video switched off, and it's not, you know, like our 10th hour of a meeting in a day, but it's just a meeting of 90 minutes. If a video is off from team members, that's distracting often for the facilitator. Okay, that's that. That's just, you know, like our very pragmatic sharing. Now what I would like to share with you for a very quick second and walk you through something is how Mighty Networks looks like. And I'm gonna take you to the visual practice space. And Mighty Networks is, you know, between like a LinkedIn and a Facebook, but it's a dedicated closed space where especially teams and communities and projects that work over time have the opportunity to exchange feedback, collect, connect, get to know one another. I really like what one of the people on our team said, and I'm not sure if it wasn't Marika, you who are on the call, that Mighty Networks requires a mighty brain to understand sometimes. So sometimes, you know, like in a way, the learning curve is steep. But what you can see is you have, you know, like the interface is similar to interfaces we're used to. You have programs, you have groups. Among the groups, you can have groups that are open, but you can also have groups that are private or are secret. So you have these different functionalities. Then you have topics as well. And you have members. You also, when you have a look here, yeah.
I think we're seeing the wrong screen.
Ah, thank you.
You're guiding us through Regenerative Life Community Facebook. There you go.
Thank you for that. Hold on. That's then let me just close this one. All right, attempt number 2. Hold on, there we go. Does that look better?
Perfect, thank you.
Perfect, wonderful. So everything that I told you about. Here are the programs, here are the groups with private secrets, the ones that you joined. Here are the topics. And here you can have a look at the members, and you can also, here you have like your profile, notifications and messages you can have with people. And there's this one, there is also Sutra. There's a number of platforms like that. Sutra was created by people who are part of the Theory U community, and it is really helpful if your journey is following the U. Yeah, so that's that. And I wanted to share that because Kelvy, you and Alfredo were using that in the individual practice modules. And so, yeah, I would like to welcome Kelvy. I'm not sure if Alfredo is here with us. Mara, is Alfredo here with us? Have you seen him?
I haven't seen him.
I can text him.
Or that's okay, you know, like he's gonna show up or not. It's just, I'm asking because it's difficult for me to scroll through all the participants. So I met both Kelvy and Alfredo. We met 2 years ago in 2018 in Rungstegard in Denmark, where Mara and Christina Hemmingsen were organizing UVIS, a global gathering of visual practitioners with over 200 practitioners joining in. And I was doing the facilitation. Let me share a visual with you. So this is how it looked like.
Good memories.
It's right. So we had, you know, like we had a little bit of a crazy time as well. We had dinosaurs asking David Sibat, why so serious? And yeah, it was a very joyful time, a very colorful time. And Kelvy and Alfredo delivered one of their visual practice modules that you guys have been delivering around the world. And for those of you who don't know Kelvy, she's the person who developed a discipline among the visual practice that's called generative scribing. And that's taken the visual practice to a completely new disruption. And it's connecting listening from a completely different place, deeper listening, and connecting things from intuition through really channeling what it is to be an artist, engaging with a social field, to systems thinking. And together with Alfredo, you were offering these fantastic visual practice modules, and we were preparing the one in Berlin that was supposed to be a special one with 5 modules for 5 days, people joining whichever module they wanted, or all of them. And then Corona happened. And I remember that we were trying to understand if we're gonna have to do something or if we can still have the modules. And I have to say that I was for myself thinking, it's not gonna be here yet. Let's, you know, like, let's do the program. And Kelvy and Alfredo yeah, you knew. So you knew that something else needed to happen than us trying to meet in Berlin. And it's really special to share it in this realm, because the people who are meeting here are people who work as facilitators, as scribes, entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, people working with teams in very diverse ways, who very often are in a similar position of either being the client or working with a client and having to move from an in-person meeting to an online meeting, and wondering how can we make sure that the quality doesn't get lost, and how do we translate that so that we still make something worthwhile, or maybe even unlock a certain potential that if we were going with a meeting in person, we wouldn't be able to work with. One of the things I always think to myself is that the visual practice modules, they are about visual practice, but for me, they are one of the most, you know, like socially engaged and political learning opportunities I have been through as well. And so when you guys decided to move from in-person to online, one of the core aspects was also the democratization of learning. And this would allow people from literally the whole globe to join that. And Kelby, I would like to ask you, like I have three subjects. Let me just, like prepare you for that. The first one is about the moving online. The second one is about the setup. And the third one is about building a container. So I remember that you shared that this activation, how it was called, that this is something that has been your dream for many years, and this has been something that was on the back burner, and it was just, like dun, 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 slowly cooking, and suddenly the historical moment was there. And I want to ask you, like, how is it when suddenly you realize this is the moment to make your dream come true? And not only is it the moment to, like implement your vision that you were thinking of at the back of your head, but also then that vision instantly got scaled and inspired the Gaia journey, which is now including around 10,000 people. So I just, I just want to ask to begin with, what kind of a feeling is that?
Well, first, hi to everyone. It's really amazing to see familiar faces and to see some actual little, even if it's video faces and beings to names that I've emailed with. So it's really lovely to be here and feel that I'm among friends as I talk about this a bit. So Carolina, what you, and also just a note, I don't know if everyone here is familiar with the visual practice modules. And basically what we did was we took, as Carolina said, what had been designed as a 5-day program, which was even already a structural shift from the normal workshops we did, which were 3-day workshops. So we usually had been doing 3-day workshops in person, and something in both Alfredo and I said, no, like, let's break it down further into modules. And so we had been designing a new structure anyway. And then I had been in so I'm backtracking a little bit more of the story before just getting to the question around the dream question. And I had been in a few sessions here in the States, in New York and in Massachusetts, where I was with a lot of people from other countries, and I was feeling like, this is just not good. This whole situation is really not good. So we were kind of planning, the whole thing involved holding one reality, an existing current reality, and at the same time attending to something that was emerging. And it was holding both of those at the same time and kind of going between every single day. And then there was one day where I remember it really clearly, because on a Saturday we had a team meeting. It was Carolina and Angela and I from PI and Alfredo. And I think it was the Saturday before we made the decision, and we checked in about like, what would it be like what are 4 different scenarios I had mapped out, because I had done a risk management session the week before I'd scribed for. I was like, we need to be flexible to plan for this risk, because I was like applying all my learning from the scribing into this. So I came up with 4 scenarios. We walked through the scenarios as a team. We said, we'll check in next Saturday and make a decision about which scenario to follow. And then that Wednesday, I talked with my parents individually, and I talked with Alfredo, and I was like, it's not happening. And it's awful. And I felt awful, like heartbroken that I was disappointing all the people. We had like 30 people coming to Berlin. There were another 15 people who had signed up for something in Russia. And I felt like I was disappointing everybody. And so overnight, it was awful. And then in a very quick window, I think something came, which is, it was like something in me clicked from fear and reaction into I'm riding this wave. And like some courage somehow came up that literally, I can't even describe, I don't even think it was me, right? It wasn't really me. It was like something coming through that was just like, this is the moment to shift. And so just like ride it, just work with it. And it's usually like when I scribe, I get very scared too. And usually something kicks in of like, this is just not about me. This is about something else. And probably a lot of you can relate to this. Okay, so I'm going on a bit, but just to kind of set up the context for it. And in that night, what happened was I went into action before realizing that this was what I had had in my heart for years. For years, since starting to work with the Presencing Institute, like when we started really founding that, and you know, way before ULab and way before a lot of any of the online programs, there was this sense of there is a community and there is a network around the world of people who are part of creating the possible future that we could live in. And you could call that like the transformation of society, or you could call that, you know, a number of different things. But there are people around the world who are working towards the next possibility for our species and for the planet, and for all species, really, to be able to care for all species. And we don't see each other. So this is what I said at one of the early PI meetings, was like, we just don't see each other yet. And so I started working for the community with the Presencing Institute and help in a Ning space, which is, Ning is the predecessor to Mighty Networks, right? And this was like in 2007. And so all of our work was around how to help the people who are working in the space of change see and find each other so that they can work together, so that we could come together. And that's been my work for years, you know, for what, a long time. And so this night, when I was turning in bed, I wasn't thinking about this is the moment. So this gets to Carolina's question. I wasn't thinking about this is the moment to activate something. I was thinking, who's awake in China right now? So I was awake in the middle of the night, and I'm like, oh, I can text Jace right away. So I was like, I can't text Jace, I need to WhatsApp Jace. So whatever channel people are used to communicating on, I was talking with like my friend, the people in Australia, the people in Taipei, the people in India, and I went around the time zones of who was awake when, to just reach out, like, and what I said was, I have this crazy, basically I was like, I have this crazy ass idea. Excuse my language, but I knew how crazy it was. And so as I was contacting people, the clarity of the thing was in parallel to the clarity of the people. So there was no, it wasn't like the idea first and then the structure to put it into place. The idea of like what it could be, the structure, the thinking, the tone, the source, all of those things were happening at the same time for what we would create. So I know this was a bit all over the place, but just to clarify, it wasn't like I had a dream and then I acted on a dream. It was more a matter of really connecting in with the source and sort of the truth of the moment and responding to the needs of the moment. Sorry, that was very long-winded and roundabout. I'll try to be more concise in the other responses. And also, if people have questions or things aren't clear, please enter them into the chat, and we can, you know, I can try to track that. And there are other people on the call who are part of this crazy journey. So Marika and Mona, I see here also. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for bringing Marika and Mona. Thank you for that. I intended to do that, but it slipped my mind. So yeah, and exactly, you know, like Kelby, as you're saying, I just want to share a schedule that you sent to us. So this is what Kelby sent to us, saying, how does it look like, people? And it was, can you see the times now? Yeah, Ella? So, and I remember it was also Jace who answered, like, I have no idea what I'm looking at. And I looked at it and I thought to myself, I understand it completely. And then I realized what I understand is the time zones and how time progresses in the globe. But, you know, so when you look at that, there were 4 sessions per day. And you can see here, like, for which region people normally are awake in these sessions. So there were 4 sessions per day, and the program was 24/7. So we had team meetings sometimes for some people at midnight or 2 a.m., you know, and people would just stay up and join the meetings. And it was completely, that's just part of the setup, because there were the 4 time zones, there were the mighty networks that people had the chance to see. There were 20 people on the team globally, representing all continents. There were 3 moves. So each module was composed of global delivery that was happening online, local practice, and global sense making. There was a very precise guidelines to feedbacking on each other's visuals on the mighty networks. There were PDFs with exercises. So Kelby, that's just like a fracture of the setup. And with this elaborate setup that you pulled off in less than 2 weeks, I want to, you know, like, I want to stress that again. What do you think was central to the success of creating a dynamics that, you know, like, being inside of the program, it was creating instant intimacy between people, and it also created a connection that is alive beyond the program?
To that, I would say love. I mean, quite simply, it's like, I loved everyone who I reached out to as a team member. It was from my heart. You know, of course, there was the connection of, you know, this person's in India, and I know that they can have the capacity to hold and communicate with people in India, and they understand the presencing work. Therefore, like, and they've been to a visual practice workshop. So there were some, you know, rational reasons for choosing sort of for the outreach that I did. But then there was also a huge heart component of, this person cares about the community at large, and they will be able to put the community at large in front of their own needs or their own concerns. And so, and I will say that of the probably, honestly, I reached out to about 24 people initially, and there was only 1 person who didn't say, like, yeah, I'll do whatever it takes. And that was purely because of scheduling. And then through the week, we ended up bringing in a few more people as guest speakers. But I think the spirit was a heart-based spirit. And I think that set the tone for the entire thing. There was also a deep respect for everyone was about to be in very different places, because coronavirus or COVID-19 had already, it was about to be strong in Italy then, but wasn't quite yet. And Alfredo was in Bologna. And there was a huge level of uncertainty about who would be able to even be part of this over the 6 days. So would Alfredo all of a sudden, you know, would Alfredo get sick? Or his parents get sick or something. So there was a high level of uncertainty of who could really support what needs where. So there was just a lot, we just built in a lot of flexibility. And in my mind, I had some redundancy throughout. So even, you know, Carolina, when you were talking earlier about Zoom meetings and having a co-host, for the Presencing Institute, we have 2 co-hosts in case one goes down, but we have Zoom calls of up to, now we're actually connecting 4 Zoom rooms of 250 people each into one online broadcast of 1,000 people through Zoom, so that we can still do the breakouts. But we have a complex structure behind that of hosting and holding so that people are held in. So one answer is love, and I think the other is just the principle of attending to the container at all times. So it's not just about the content being delivered, it's how are people as human beings, how are people, and what are we doing? What are we providing that's aligned with our beings, not just what we're trying to learn for work. And so I think that was pretty core. I think I answered your question, but maybe I also went astray again. Yeah. I think I cared so much about this. I mean, that's something I can't stress enough. Like, it was so deep in my heart that this was possible. It wasn't just, okay, yeah, on one level, we had all these people I needed to pay back for canceling the program in Berlin. And then there were like all these other factors that were, like pragmatic factors. But at core, what I cared about was our community is about to crumble with what's coming. And this is a moment to connect us energetically somehow. So obviously I still care about it a lot, because when I talk about it, I get emotional, but did I answer your question?
I really appreciate, Kelby, you given this as an answer, because this is what, like with the Leadership Festival, with the collective and the community, this is what we're observing as well, in how people more and more open up about being heart-driven, and about this being their guide, and this being important, and it not just being an add-on or something fuzzy or nice, but this being the actual place where part of really important truth lies. Mm-hmm. And we're beginning to say, for example, that our event is around, like building a heart-driven transformative community of practice. This is something we would have never said 2 years ago. Right? So there is something shifting, and it's shifting because we're stepping into this vulnerability, and with all the emotional cost of what it takes to say that, we're admitting that. And by this, we're building more security for the ones that are coming after us, to not make themselves so easily ridiculed if this is what they show. So, I have a couple of technical questions, but I'm just going to put them at the back. And now I would like to ask you about the container, because there was something to say about the, like the energy of the sessions and the energy of the team that hosted all of that. And some participants were reporting that they felt, like in trance, or that it was like a different time, or a deep time, or an altered state. And there was something like an underlying current in the atmosphere of the calls. And as much as I respect that there are some things that are not to be talked about, from, like the level of that is possible to be translated into words, and is possible to communicate also with others. Like, what is it that you pay special attention to before and during hosting a session to build this kind of a container?
Yeah, again, I think it goes back to a genuine care and trust, and probably also delight and surprise. So all the people who were on the team, I have experienced that with in different settings. So the team had not experienced that as a team, but I had experienced that, Carolina, with you when we did the last workshop together in Berlin in 2019, and we didn't have soap in the rooms for people. And we hadn't worked together yet, Carolina, and you went out and you bought blocks of soap, and you chopped it up, and you made beautiful little packages so that people could take soap back to their room. So when this was, when we were about to shift everything online, I knew you had an attention to detail for looking out for people. So, okay, so then what role of the various roles that we would need was best suited to that? And so, and that was for each person. And again, this is like the whole thing came up where the structures came into place as the needs of the whole thing became clear. It was like there was a skeleton of the design, but it was like the skin and the organs and the skeleton sort of all came up at one time. They all sort of evolved at once. And the quality in the team, I think that as we had these calls together as a team, the qualities from each person started to become clear, and then others could, we had a very fast cross-pollination. So this is a good example how, for scaling, because, one person discovered how to play music before a meeting, probably Alfredo. And then we started using that in one way in the North America calls or the America calls. And then Marcia in the America calls started doing something differently with the journaling practice. And so then we would have an all-team call and reflect on that one part. And then that was spread over to Asia before the Asia call. And then Asia would innovate something that then we would learn about and then bring it back to the Europe call the next day. So I think it was like, there was like a way that the individuals had freedom to do what they knew how to do well and to follow their own skill and talent and sensing and heart. And then at the same time work in small teams and then be part of a regional team and then part of the larger team. So there was a way that people could activate individually and then also come back to the whole. And that was a similar process for the sessions themselves. So people were coming in for learning and then going back to practice and then coming in for sense making. So this is to honor the extrovert and introvert in the field, the design, so that people could have time on their own and together. And I would say that the pattern of the team, the pattern of the core with Alfredo and myself, and then the pattern of the team regionally and as a whole, set the pattern for the larger community and how people felt held and could trust each other and also free to just draw what they wanted in their own way. So it was a mix of structure and freedom, I think. I'm kind of curious to hear also from Mona and Marika, if they have like what their sense of like how the feeling, like, I don't know, maybe Carolina, maybe you want to restate your question because again, I lost it, but yeah, I guess I just also want to bring in their voices because that was part of it too. This was not about me delivering content. This was like a whole team effort around certain things that we all knew about that we wanted to help share out.
Wonderful, thank you. So like restating the question just really briefly, it's like the quality of the container was exquisite. If people want to learn to walk this path, like what is it that they can pay attention to so that they can attract that into their practice? So Mona, Marika, if you would like to share, go ahead.
Now I don't see Marika, so I can, yeah, I'll just start. I think actually it was you, Karo, who said that in one of the debriefs afterwards that it felt like the whole team was showing up at the best possible at all times. So that also made you constantly wanted to show up the best, even if there was a small glitch in that structure, because it was really complex, time zones, a lot of people, emails out, mighty network space. even though if there was like this, there was never a blame. So everyone really showed up and held it all together. I think that was super powerful to work in a team of that many people, and you had a constant feeling of everyone pulling together when it was needed. And there was not that's your role, so you should do this. No, if there's something missing, everyone is filling the gap. And I think that was super powerful. And that hosting online is not only on Zoom, it's in the emails, it's in the spreadsheets, it's in that communication, that people are not hanging in mighty networks with questions for 7 hours before they can start their practice. I think there's so many details that is super important to, yeah. Marike?
Mona, I love it how you always add something that the rest of us hasn't thought about in that very moment. It's completely amazing. Marike, just check in with you if you would like to share.
Yeah, I think someone said, or some participants, I remember they said, this is so well done in just 2 weeks' time. And then one of us, well, maybe Kelvin yourself or someone else said, basically, this wasn't done in 2 weeks. This was built on in a few years. I mean, yeah, of course, this is not something that you do overnight. I mean, not with this level of quality, with mighty networks, with all the support behind it. And what I think was also very important was the tone of voice and all the communication. So then in that way you attract the people you want to have in your groups, right? You become the magnet of the people you want to deal with. And then you get magic when the right people show up. And I'm sure there's many more things, but let's keep it to this.
Thank you so much. Kelvin, I would like to ask you a very practical question as the last one from me and our team. It's actually Mara, your question. Like, what is, like, when you design a flow for an online meeting, what is the difference? Like, what are you designing in that is different from a meeting that you would design in person?
Yeah, this is something I've really been thinking about this week in particular. Also after a call, another call that I was on where somebody asked me about what has changed with listening, my listening when I'm scribing online. And I can't underemphasize the role of the heart enough. And I don't know if we're designing our online structures or online meetings to let people show up as their whole beings. And I don't necessarily know what that looks like, but we know what it's like to plan a meeting with an agenda and items that we need to get through and outcomes. We know that. And I always felt like scribing offered and facilitation offers an ability to bring in the softer elements or the less tangible element, the more organic elements of ourselves into a room. So through a drawing, you can influence like the feel of the room. And I don't know how that happens now online, but I would say that we want to consider how we create spaces where people can connect as beings, not just as little thinking boxes, but how do we bring our full beings into these online spaces? And I don't really have the answer for that. I don't know how scribing supports that, but I can't imagine this sustaining itself without us somehow working to deepen our humanity.
So what Marike added in terms of deepening our humanity is as well humor. And I think that's absolutely important, you know, like when things happen and how you hold them. Yeah. Mara, I wanted to check with you if there were any questions in the chat.
Most of the questions are answered, but have been 2 people asking if this is going to happen again.
I don't think I've recovered yet. Yeah, definitely.
Too early.
The humor was starting to see Kelby completely breaking down. I think I was the I'm like seeing me at 2 in the morning in the same clothes for 5 days in a row. No, I don't know. Yeah, a lot of people have asked too, and I actually don't know if we ever could do it again. I think it was a moment in time, honestly. I think the content will come back in some form in different places. With the Presencing Institute, we've just launched U Academy, which will be more of a capacity building part within the Presencing Institute. And I was talking this morning with my colleague Julie about what visual practices programming we could bring into that. So I think you could be on the lookout there for some things. But right now, Alfredo and I, we don't have any, there's no plan for. The world is just, I don't know, things are changing. It doesn't, you'll know, when you see something out there online, all right, I have a crazy idea, then you'll know something's brewing. Right now, there's nothing planned.
Okay.
But I just want to say one more thing is the comment that Marika made about this not happening in 2 weeks, that this happening in over time, is there was a bringing together of many networks also, and previous experiments, previous prototypes. So we had been considering this as a prototype in the spirit of a line of prototypes. And so it built on structures from ULab, it built on global classrooms with the Presencing Institute, it built on work that the Value Web had done. I mean, it brought together a lot of previous experiences. So I'd say that's just something to consider in how we start designing these online meetings or online gatherings or coming togethers, that we can bring in, go out to the edges of our knowing and bring in practices and ways and cultural things that work in different contexts and mash it up, just like break things down and mash them up, because this is a new kind of kitchen. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Kelby, and thank you for joining us and sharing this behind the scenes, because there is often this what we see and what we experience, and there is a lot behind the scenes that is so rich. And this is, this is the learning of becoming the giants on whose shoulders others then can dream and reach out to new places and explore new territories. I would like to give all of the participants the opportunity to let that sit for a while and exchange in small breakouts. I'm going to send you to breakouts of 2 to 3, and you're going to have 15 minutes. So we're creating a different level of spaciousness here. And I'm sending you with 2 questions. And the first question is, what do you do or know that others do intentionally to build and hold a container? And the second one is, as this is the last of our modules in online facilitation, connecting to all of them, from practical to heart-driven. What do you want to really anchor for yourself and think of when you're preparing to facilitate your next meeting? And we would really like to ask you to bring back with you written down free ideas. So I'm gonna send out everybody to the breakout rooms, and Mara and Kelby, you can just stay here if you want.
Those also changing.
I want to welcome back everybody. Wonderful to see you back here. Kelby, just want to check if there's anything you wanted to add that you didn't manage to share before the break that might be important for people. Okay, so I would like to ask all of you to paste what are the free ideas that you have in the chat. And if we could hear a couple of voices. There's 33 of us in the call, so let's just check if maybe we can go with you just unmuting yourself and trying to go ahead. Let's try to be gentle about that, and maybe it's going to work out. Who of you would like to share?
Hi, Caro. I'll share.
Hi, Carol.
I know that my partner Costanzas, she's going to be writing it down too, but I think one point that we were talking about was really connecting to our heart and making sure that that's not just during the meeting, but in the creation and the design. And so it's very easy, I know, for me to get like it's like, oh, like, what's the poll going to be? What's this? So letting that tech sort of frenetic energy be in the space. So, and to think about how do we, I think we talked about it, it's like weaving that heart energy through, you know, the beginning, through the meeting, and then really holding and carrying beyond. So that was one idea. I'll leave space for others.
Thank you so much, Carolyn.
You're welcome.
Who else would like to share?
Okay, I will go. So we thought about sharing clear intention from the head and also the heart, like Caroline said, to be connected. Be prepared with support, like co-host and tech, and also ask for feedbacks, as you said, just to with your co-host or participants. I said.
Thank you, Sven. Thank you so much. How about one or two more voices?
I can go ahead. So in the breakout room, we were really reflecting about how important it is to check in with people whenever we start a meeting. So in order to create this space of confidence and where everyone can share their feelings and check in with their team or with the group they are participating into. So that was something that came out during the conversation, and as well your presence. So the presence of the facilitator and the presence of the co-facilitators and their ability of always putting a smile on, as you were saying, Carolina, and really making the room comfortable enough for others to really be focused and also share what they understood during the meetings, and giving the participants the possibilities of interacting.
Thank you so much.
Maybe I'll try to jump in.
Great.
So we don't have the golden solution, but one of the things we discussed was trying to bring the body back into online meetings. I'm quite a physical person, and I always, right now I just want to run around basically. And so we had this idea that maybe you need more frequent breaks in online meetings, but that you can facilitate those using some of the typical energizers that will also work online. That you can also use the fact that people are locked in unusual settings in fun ways, like, I don't know, silly challenges like, okay, all stretch your legs, come back in 3 minutes with a blue object, or things like that. What else did we discuss? The idea of using sign language in a systematic way and building it if it's a recurring community. It's a lovely little sign that you can share. And also using platforms like Miro or Mural to do physical stuff, because suddenly you have a space, so you can be quite creative with the way you're moving post-it notes, for instance, to actually communicate something and get quick feedback from a group. Those were our ideas, I said.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Julie. And it's fantastic that you said, talking about bringing body into the meeting. That's something that we're going to do as the last thing in our meeting, actually. Yeah, because, like, Mara and Kelby and myself, we had a short conversation in our little breakout, and I realized one of the things I really miss is dancing with other people, especially dancing on tables. You know, like I miss the opportunity to dance on tables. You cannot do it by yourself, or it's a different thing, you know. So being in movement in your body. It's really something that I'm noticing. I'm, you know, like missing more and more with all of these Zoom meetings. And as we're coming to a close of our meeting, I really want to express, Kelby, my deep gratitude for sharing your journey with us, and also, you know, like adding an additional layer to facilitation, and thank you for being with us in this journey and being an inspiration in this, that some things are, you know, fast learning and other things are slow learning. And the slow learning is sometimes difficult to put into words. Sometimes you have to experience it and experience it and experience it, and then something unlocks in you. So we were bringing in the archetypes 2 weeks ago, and I know that some of you were confused by the archetypes or overwhelmed, and I was having this conversation with Mara saying, it's okay for me. It's okay, you know, because you need to hear it a couple of numbers of times, and then something makes a click. I had that with systems thinking. The first time I was thinking like, I think I'm not as smart as I thought of myself. And it's okay. Some learning is slow learning, and that's the nature of that as well. So thank you, Kelby, for being with us in that. And it's beautiful to have Mona and Marika, you here, connecting the journeys as well. And Mara, is there anything you, before we do the checkout, you want to say about next week, which is our last session?
So next week we will, well, I've been taking some notes, like how does scribing and how do visuals help to build that container? That's a question I'm taking with me to design next week's session. But also we will be talking about the report out of in complex group processes when going in breakouts. What are other ways to share stuff back into plenary, other than just typing it in the chat? So we'll think about the visual component of that.
Thank you so much. And as the last thing, I would like to ask all of us to unmute, stand up, take a step back, and do a gesture. And maybe it might be that there's a sound as well that shows how you're leaving this meeting. Going out of this meeting, into the world. How is it that you're going into the world? And for me,
I can send it to you if you want to put. I say okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Lots of love. Be well.
Bye bye.
Stay safe.
Thank you so much, Carolina.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.